What would you do if the man you were falling for, who listened to your every word, who showed up to your classroom events, who seemed too good to be true, turned out to be exactly that? What if the wheelchair he sat in was part of a lie, and the quiet man you trusted was secretly one of the richest men in the country? This isn't just a love story. It's a story about fear, forgiveness, and the painful beauty of truth. When masks fall, hearts are exposed, and sometimes what's underneath is even more powerful than the lie that hid it. Stay with us because what happens next will shake your emotions and maybe even restore your faith in second chances. A confession is coming, but so is something no one expected. Why would a billionaire pretend to be disabled on a first date? Was it a twisted joke, a cruel test, or something far deeper and more broken than anyone could imagine? Grant Whitaker adjusted his navy blue tie with mechanical precision. His jaw clenched slightly as he stared at his reflection. The man in the mirror looked powerful, polished, and in control, exactly how the world knew him. But that wasn't the man he was about to present. Behind him sat a sleek black wheelchair, polished to look realistic. This would be his 5th time using it on a blind date. "You're really doing this again?" asked Claire Whitaker, his younger sister, leaning against the doorframe with folded arms. "This is messed up, Grant. Seriously, it's a social experiment," Grant muttered, slipping into the wheelchair with practiced ease. "I need to know who actually sees me, not the money, not the headlines." Claire scoffed. "You're not running an experiment. You're hiding. Again." But he was already wheeling toward the elevator of his penthouse at Hudson Tower. That night, the upscale yet quietly elegant Harrison's Bistro shimmered with candlelight and muted jazz. Grant arrived early as always. He hated attention and preferred to avoid a grand entrance. Ironic given his fortune came from designing luxury skyscrapers with grand entrances. The maitre d' led him to his reserved table. "Would you like help with your chair, sir?" "I'm good," Grant replied sharply. As he waited, he noticed the pitying glances from nearby tables, the too gentle smiles, the avoided stares. It was exactly what he expected, exactly what had disgusted him in the past. "Until hire you?" Grant, a soft voice asked. He looked up and blinked. Hannah Brooks stood before him dressed in a simple olive green dress. No jewelry, no overly styled hair. Just natural grace with dark eyes that didn't waver when they landed on him. "I'm Hannah. Sorry I'm a bit late. Traffic on 9th was awful." "No problem," Grant smiled. "I just got here." She sat down smoothly, never even glancing at the wheelchair. No awkward pause, no fake concern. It threw him completely. They ordered. Conversation flowed. Hannah spoke about her students at Riverside Public School, about her love for literature, and her mother who suffered from arthritis. She asked about his job. He gave the same cover story, a mid-level admin role at a construction firm, modest apartment, recovering from a car accident 3 years ago. Hannah didn't press for details. When dessert came, she insisted on splitting the check. "I don't want this to be transactional," she said, smiling gently. "Next time you can treat." Grant stared at her, stunned. In all his previous experiments, women had either ghosted him after learning of the chair or clung harder when they learned the truth. But Hannah, she just existed honestly. As they stepped outside, she didn't offer to help him. She simply smiled, kissed his cheek, and said, "I had a really great time. Call me if you want to do it again." Grant sat in his car for 20 minutes before driving off, still in the wheelchair, still dazed. Something about Hannah had cut through the armor he'd built for years. For the first time, the lie felt heavy, like a chain. Back home, Claire sat waiting with a glass of wine in hand. "Well, she's different," he said simply. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Different enough for you to tell her the truth." Silence. "You know this can't go on forever," she warned. "You're not just pretending to be disabled, Grant. You're testing people like they're rats in a lab. But she's not one of your blueprints. She's real, and she deserves real." "I just need a little more time," he murmured. "I want to know her. But if I tell her now, I'll lose her." "And if she finds out on her own?" Claire asked, voice sharp. "You'll lose her worse." Grant didn't answer. He stared at the skyline, the one he'd helped build, and wondered when his own foundation had begun to crack. The next afternoon, he texted Hannah. "Cafe tomorrow." Her reply came within a minute. Maple Street Cafe, 5 p.m. He arrived early again at the quiet coffee shop tucked between a flower shop and a thrift bookstore. a place for real people, not for billionaires hiding behind wheelchairs. Hannah entered with a worn book under her arm. "I brought you something," she said, handing him a used copy of Chronicle of a Death Foretold. "You said you loved Garcia Marquez but hadn't read this one." Grant took the book, slowly struck by how no one had ever gifted him something so thoughtful. Not expensive, not flashy, but real. "I'll take good care of it," he said. "No," she corrected, laughing. "Read it. Books aren't trophies. They're meant to be lived through." As they sipped coffee, Hannah opened up about her students' kids with tough home lives and little support. She even brought books from her own collection to the classroom because their library was falling apart. "And your principal lets that slide?" he asked, stunned. "She does what she can. We're all in the same leaky boat." She talked about her mother, Margaret, who used to be a teacher too. They lived together in a tiny apartment across from the school. "You know," she added, "you don't talk much about your life." Grant hesitated. "There's not much to say, just meetings and paperwork." "Still, it matters." He changed the subject, suggesting a walk in Willow Creek Park. For a moment, panic bubbled in his chest. Would she push the chair? Would she treat him like porcelain? But she didn't. She just walked beside him. And when he thanked her, when he told her she was different, she smiled and asked, "Different? How?" "Just real," he replied. Later that night, back in his penthouse, he stood from the chair and stared at the city again. He was falling for someone while hiding the worst part of himself. And somehow, that part wasn't the lie about the wheelchair. It was the fact that he was terrified to be seen. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. If someone lied to you about who they were, but not how they treated you, would you forgive them? Do you think Grant is justified in testing people like this? Or is it emotional manipulation? Have you ever met someone who changed how you saw the world? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched your heart, drop a like. The first time Grant Whitaker hesitated to get out of the wheelchair at home, it wasn't because he was tired. It was because for the first time in years, he wished the lie were true, because then maybe he wouldn't have to risk losing Hannah Brooks. For 2 weeks after their first coffee at Maple Street Cafe, things progressed like a dream. Walks in Willow Creek Park, late-night texts about books, jokes about her students' hilarious essay answers. He hadn't felt this connected to someone since ever. But the lie stood between them, quiet and heavy like a ticking bomb. Every time she mentioned her mother's arthritis, or lifted a book bag without help, or laughed without judgment, Grant felt that knife of guilt twist deeper. He wanted to tell her. He nearly did. Twice. The first time was after she invited him to a literary showcase her students were organizing at Riverside Public. The invitation had been shy but hopeful. "It's nothing fancy, but they've worked really hard. Would mean a lot if you came." "I'd be honored," Grant said too fast. She looked surprised. "You don't need to pretend to care. I'm not pretending." And he wasn't. But he was pretending something much bigger. That night he sat in his penthouse, whiskey untouched, staring at the ceiling. Claire walked in and spotted the wheelchair still by the door. "You didn't even bother putting it away this time." He didn't answer. "She invited you to her school, didn't she?" Claire guessed. "Yes." "Let me guess, you said yes, but you're not going as you. You're going as your pathetic, broken-down decoy." Grant stood, slowly rubbing his face. "Don't call it that." "Oh, I'm sorry. Should I call it your social experiment again? That makes it sound more academic and less like emotional manipulation." "She likes who she thinks I am," he said quietly. "No, Grant. She likes who you act like, not who you are. The guy she thinks you are doesn't own half the real estate in Manhattan. The guy she thinks you are didn't fake a disability to test her morality." Grant's voice dropped to a whisper. "If I tell her now, I lose her." Claire didn't respond for a long moment. "Then maybe, but if she finds out on her own, you lose everything." The next day, Grant arrived early at the school. No driver, no wheelchair. He left both behind. The students were rushing about adjusting props and decorations. The auditorium at Riverside Public was a patchwork of color handmade posters, crepe streamers, paper flowers. It was simple, beautiful, honest. Hannah greeted him with a warm smile and a kiss on the cheek. You made it. Wouldn't miss it, he said, and for the first time he truly meant it. She didn't introduce him as anything special, just a friend, a guest, a quiet man sitting in the back row, observing a life very different from his. As the students read their poems, some shaky, some loud and proud, Grant's eyes were drawn not to the stage, but to the way Hannah lit up with each child's triumph. It wasn't performance, it was purpose. She leaned toward him during a skit and whispered, "See that boy in the blue shirt? He didn't speak for the first month of school. Now he's performing a scene from Of Mice and Men." That night he couldn't sleep. He paced his penthouse, turning over the moment again and again. He couldn't shake the way she had looked at him like he belonged, not because of what he had, but because of what he gave. He called Claire. "I'm telling her tomorrow." There was silence on the line. Then a soft exhale. "Good. Don't wait for her to find out the hard way." He found Hannah the next afternoon in her classroom sorting books. She wore a paint-stained sweater and had her hair in a messy bun, humming softly to herself. He stood at the door, heart thudding. When she looked up, her eyes widened. "Grant." The book in her hand fell to the floor. "You're standing." He stepped inside slowly. "I need to talk to you." Her face froze. "You can walk." "Yes." "How long?" Her voice was cold now. "Since the day we met." She looked like she'd been slapped. "Then who the hell have I been spending my time with?" It started out as something stupid, a defense. I was tired of people wanting me for my last name or what they saw in headlines. I just wanted to know if someone could care about me without all that. "So you faked a disability," she snapped. "Grant, that's unforgivable. Do you even realize what that means to people who really live with that reality?" He nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "I do. Now, is there anything else you've lied about?" He hesitated. "I'm the CEO of Whitaker Development. My family owns several buildings in the city." Her eyes widened again. "Of course you are." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "You didn't even give me the choice to meet the real you," she said, voice breaking. "You built a version of yourself that you thought I'd accept. But I never asked for that. I just wanted someone honest. I was afraid," he admitted, "of losing you." "Well, you might have lost me anyway." He stood there in silence, absorbing the damage. "Just go, Grant." He nodded and left. That night, Hannah couldn't grade a single paper. Her mom, Margaret, noticed the silence and brought over a cup of tea. "He told you," she nodded. "Are you angry because he lied or because he's rich?" Hannah exhaled. "Because he made me fall for someone who wasn't real." Her mother smiled gently. "He wasn't fake, just scared. The difference matters." "But does it excuse it?" Hannah whispered. "No, but maybe it explains it, and that's a start." Meanwhile, Grant stared at a blank sheet of paper on his desk. His therapist had told him to stop running, so he wrote a letter, not a plea, not a performance, just the truth. He delivered it himself to Riverside Public School, addressed only to Hannah. No messenger, no envelope with logos, no gifts, just his words. And then he waited. The letter arrived on a Wednesday morning. Hannah Brooks found it tucked in her mailbox at Riverside Public School, folded inside plain white paper, no logo, no return address, only her name written in careful penmanship. She knew immediately it was from Grant. She didn't open it right away. She placed it in her desk drawer and stared at it through 2 class periods and 1 awkward staff meeting. Only after the students had gone home and the sun began sliding down behind the schoolyard fence did she sit down in the empty classroom and slowly unfold it. No grand apology, no excuses, just the truth. He told her about the motorcycle accident years ago, the fiancé who vanished when doctors said he might never walk again, the way she returned only after he'd miraculously recovered. He wrote about how that betrayal rewired something deep inside him, made him believe that love was nothing more than a transaction. And so he had built walls, luxurious, sophisticated, impenetrable. He never expected her to tear them down with nothing more than kindness. At the end of the letter, he wrote, "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I only ask that you see me not as the man who lied, but the man trying to stop hiding. You taught me that honesty isn't weakness. It's the only way forward. Thank you." Hannah folded the letter again and placed it back in the drawer, but the words stayed with her like a quiet hum in her chest. 3 days passed. Then came Friday at 4 p.m., her students' final showcase of the semester. It was a modest production held in the gymnasium, decorated with paper lanterns and handmade signs. The theme she'd chosen for their performances: second chances. The gym buzzed with energy. Parents filled the folding chairs. Students nervously adjusted microphones, and Hannah stood off to the side, clipboard in hand, smile forced but steady. She hadn't invited him, but when she glanced toward the back of the room as the lights dimmed, she saw him. Grant Whitaker sat quietly in the last row, wearing jeans and a plain navy sweater. No flashy watch, no entourage, just him holding a bouquet of sunflowers. She blinked once, then turned back to the stage. The show went on. One student recited a poem about forgiving his father. Another performed a monologue about finding beauty in imperfection. Every word, every emotion was raw and real. And through it all, Hannah kept glancing back, watching the man who had spent his life hiding in the spotlight sit unnoticed in the shadows. When the show ended, applause echoed through the gym. Students hugged their families, parents snapped pictures, and Hannah collected her clipboard with trembling hands. Grant didn't approach. He waited, letting her choose. She did. She walked across the gym, slowly accepting hugs from her students until she stopped in front of him. "You came." He stood holding out the flowers. "You mentioned once your classroom didn't get much light. Thought these might help." She took the bouquet. "They're beautiful." They stood in silence for a moment. "I read your letter," she said softly. "Twice. I meant every word." "I know." She looked down, then up. "You said you weren't asking for forgiveness, but I think you still hope for it." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. "I'm not sure I can forget the lies," she continued, "but I also can't forget how you looked at my students like they mattered, or how you listened to me like every word counted. That version of you, that was real, wasn't it?" He nodded. "It was the only real part of me. And I want to be that man, Hannah. Not for the world, for you." Her smile came slowly, cautious but sincere. "Then come meet my mother again. This time, as yourself." Dinner that night at Hannah's tiny apartment was simple: chicken soup and cornbread. Margaret Brooks greeted Grant with a raised eyebrow and a long pause before nodding approvingly. "At least you're standing on your own this time." "I deserve that," he said with a sheepish smile. "Yes, you do." Over the weeks that followed, Grant didn't try to fix everything. He didn't buy Hannah a new apartment or donate millions to the school, at least not yet. Instead, he showed up to book readings, to student events, to tea with Margaret. They read together, walked together, talked about guilt therapy, family, and dreams. And little by little, the trust rebuilt. It was slow, it was messy, but it was real. 8 months later, Riverside Public School celebrated its biggest graduation ceremony yet. Thanks to a mysterious donor, the gym now had proper lights, working AC, and a brand new library. Hannah stood backstage in a pale blue dress, watching her students prepare. She looked toward the audience and spotted Grant again, this time in the front row, holding a camera instead of flowers. Their eyes met. She smiled, and so did he. After the ceremony, Hannah joined him outside under the string lights hung between the trees. The air was warm, sweet, with the scent of summer. "I have something for you," Grant said, handing her a small envelope. She opened it slowly. 2 plane tickets, one word printed in bold Portugal. She looked up, confused. "Your grandmother's hometown," he said. "You once told me she used to sing you lullabies in Portuguese. I thought, maybe it's time we go find the roots of your stories." Hannah stared at him, heart full. "No diamonds, no keys to a mansion?" "No." Grant smiled. "Just time and honesty. The only 2 things I ever really had to give." She reached for his hand. "That's all I ever wanted." And under the lanterns, the applause still echoing behind them, they walked toward the future. No masks, no roles. Just 2 people learning to love in the most honest way they knew how. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. What did you feel watching Grant and Hannah's story unfold? Do you believe in second chances like Hannah gave him? If you were her, would you have forgiven him? If this story touched your heart, comment 100 below. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to believe in the power of redemption and real love. Because sometimes, the most beautiful stories begin when the lies end.